Hello, good afternoon. This is the Midday News. The news is live on Joy 99.7 FM in Accra and Kumasi. It's on Love 99.5 FM in over 30 affiliates across Ghana's 16 regions. We are on Amenuveve FM in Aflao, Clenham Radio in Bato, A1 Radio in Bolgatanga, Dreams FM also in Bolgatanga, Sun City Radio in Keta. You can go digital on Spotify and my joyonline.com app. We're also live on Facebook. It's Joy 99.7 FM. In this edition, Chairman of Parliament's Finance Committee says any probe into government's expenditure must be expanded to cover government's total expenditure for the year 2020.
Explains why the committee's hiving off a small part of the total expenditure in 2020, for instance, and pretending that the committee should do work on that small part. But as for the bigger part of money, we should leave it to the Auditor General to be dealt with traditionally. It's lost on me.
We get to hear from the minority leader who says the COVID-19 expenditure statement by the finance minister has opened a can of worms that needs thorough probing.
Is to identify item by item what went into 12 billion as expenditure on COVID. Then we'll know how much you spend on PPEs, how much you spend on traveling.
We'll hear from an anti-corruption group on this. Also, drivers, Okada riders and spare parts dealers prepare to hit the streets over what they say is the unbearable hikes in fuel and other commodities which have significantly impacted their business. We're live on the ground. Researchers predict government's quest to raise some 4.5 billion cedis from the electronic transaction levy not likely to be met, as majority of Ghanaian samples say they have drastically reduced mobile money transactions.
After the enactment of the e-levy, we saw that the transfer cost became critical. So the people are looking at the transfer cost. Is the cost high? If the cost is high, I don't want to use. If it's not high, I want to use. 83% of them indicate that the volume has reduced for them.
We'll get to hear from the GRA on this. Also coming up this afternoon, we hear the cry of former toll booth workers, most of them living with disability, asking government to fulfill promises of reassigning them after 6 months of joblessness. Plus, an update on what has become of the toll booths abandoned 6 months ago.
Toll booth now, you had Apawu.
There were no vehicles parking here when the toll system was functioning.
Almost Africa my bus stop.
We also have sports.
Qatar has got strict laws. Abide by its laws during the World Cup. Please tell Ghanaians as they promise to issue clearance forms for supporters and other revelers.
We have that and more in this afternoon's edition of the Midday News with me, Emefa. Apawu, many thanks for choosing us. This is your home of independent, fearless and credible journalism. Please stay for details. Thanks for choosing us. This afternoon, Chairman of Parliament's Finance Committee, Kweku Kwating, is questioning why the House is not showing interest in the government's expenditure of 112 billion cedis in the 2020 fiscal year, but is rather fixated on probing what he describes as a small expenditure in the COVID-19 report. Speaker Alban Babin yesterday directed the Finance and Health Committees to investigate government's expenses on finance, despite the answers provided by the Finance Ministry yesterday, which the minority say have been unsatisfactory. Here's parliamentary correspondent Kweku Asante with a recap of what happened in Parliament.
After failing on 2 occasions to make a statement on COVID-19 expenditure, Finance Minister Ken Ofori-Atta finally appeared before Parliament to render an account of government's expenditure on COVID-19. According to the Finance Minister, government has spent 12 billion cedis on COVID-19 related expenditure for 2020 and 2021.
The program expenditure amounted to 15.763 for the COVID-19 related expenditure, out of which the actual utilization was 12.036.
The minority in Parliament have described the responses given by the minister as inconsistent and unsatisfactory. Ranking member on the Finance Committee, Dr. Kisela Toforsen, says the minister did not account for about 7.3 billion cedis.
What he has failed to do is to tell us that between the 19.3 billion and the 12 billion, the difference of 7.3 billion, where the money is and what they have used the money for. I call on you, Mr. Speaker, to set up an ad hoc committee so that we can bring the various head of the MDAs.
Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu backed the calls of his ranking member for an independent probe into the expenditure. But the majority side opposed this request. Both the Majority Leader Osei Mensah Bonsu and his deputy Alexander Afenyo-Markin argued the NDC minority had no justifiable basis to make the request. Speaker of Parliament Alban Bagbin sided with the minority and ordered the Joint Committee of Finance and Health to probe the expenditure. According to the Speaker, there are gaps in the answers provided by the Finance Minister.
To investigate and inquire further into the application and utilization of all the revenues received, referred to as COVID-19 funds.
Well, the Joint Committees of Finance and Health are expected to present their report to the plenary in October. But Chairman of the Finance Committee, Kweku Kwating, says the House should also be interested in probing government-reported expenditure in 2020.
A lot of the items that were listed in paragraph 11 of the minister's statement as the sources of the COVID money added to the 19.3. About 95% of them were loans. We are paying interest on those loans.
Right.
So that's why, when people say, on the one hand, we got money from development partners, on the other hand, as though somehow numbers don't add up.
So in other words, because a lot of these were loans, as you say, up to 95%, it also means that whatever interest that will accrue on those loans or whatever payments we have to make will also come out of that same kitty.
As a policy, we should find out what the impact of COVID itself has been and will be in the calculable future. In 2020, the total government expenditure reported in the 2021 budget was 112 billion Ghana cedis. Now, all the accountability questions we are asking, that we are now asking on just some roughly 20 billion. What about the rest? Is Parliament and the minister going to be invited, or some monies are more valuable, some cities are more valuable than some cities?
He admits further that the country cannot use COVID as an excuse for further borrowing.
I am one of those who believe that, yes, we should not be borrowing in the name of COVID going forward, except in very exceptional cases, as we saw in the COVID facility that brought all the Buhaha. Facility is extremely cheap. If, for instance, you designate that Agenda 111 is a product of lessons learned from COVID, that we suddenly realized we did not have enough health facilities, and in some communities, isolation centers were not available, and some warehouses had to be converted to isolation centers. So, as a result of the COVID experience, we now want to build Agenda 111 and make provision for these going forward. And you have some cheap facility that will help with that. By all means, let's go for it. But generally, we cannot, especially when we are charging the recovery levy, we cannot continue borrowing in the name of COVID. But
that's the chairman of the Finance Committee of Parliament, Kweku Kwating there. Well, the minority has questioned the discrepancies in the figures reported by the Finance Minister and the President. Minority Leader Haruna Idrisu wants the committee to scrutinize all items captured in the expenditure.
So what we are seeking the Parliamentary Committee to do is to identify item by item what went into 12 billion as expenditure on COVID. Then we'll know how much you spend on PPEs, how much you spend on traveling. Paragraph 32, government program a total of 1.2 billion for security operations. So we want a breakdown of security operations. Was it people sleeping in hotels? Was it getting Ghanaians into the country? Was it meant for feeding people? Where we want to understand the 1.2 billion. But listen to the minister in paragraph 32. This expenditure was utilized by the Ministry of Local Government and Rural Development, the Interior, Justice and Attorney General, Defense, National Security, and Goya. Goya? What's Goya doing there?
It doesn't say in the statement.
Yes, so you must probe further. And what is fundamentally missing that I'm aware of, Ministry of Foreign Affairs in their budget estimates to Parliament could not explain some 46 million plus 19 million, which amounted to 65 million, spent in the name of COVID by the Minister of Finance, not by the Minister of Foreign Affairs. So first of all, is Minister of Finance a procurement entity for Minister of Foreign Affairs? No. So we want to be able to understand this 1.2 billion, which ministry got what and for what?
That's the Minority Leader, Haruna Idrisi. So what exactly are the figures and the discrepancies in there? The Joy News Research Desk has been doing some extensive checks on the account given by the Finance Minister, juxtaposing it with previous accounts on COVID-19 related expenses captured in various budget documents since 2020. Isaac Kofieje is a data analyst with Joy Research Desk. He joins me in studio with the findings. Kofi, walk us through what you discovered.
So since we recorded our first COVID-19 case in March 2020, the Finance Minister has submitted 4 different, budget documents to Parliament. The first one is the 2020 mid-year budget review. The second is the 2021 budget itself. Then we had the mid-year review and this year's budget, which is 2022 budget. Now, the Finance Minister, in 3 out of the 4 budget documents, has given a cumulative account on how much government has spent on COVID-19. Per our checks, we came across 2 tables featured in page 99 of the 2021 mid-year budget review. Now, the first table outlined how much government has received as support in 2020 due to the pandemic, and the total amount was 19.3 billion Ghana cedis. The second table also outlined how much government had received as support in 2021, and the total was 6.29 billion Ghana cedis. So if you add these 2 figures, it means the total amount is over 25 billion Ghana cedis. Now, yesterday on page 15 of the Finance Minister's own statement, only the first table contained in the 2021 mid-year budget review was just lifted and put in the statement, just that one, leaving the second, table. So we asked a very big question: why did the Finance Minister leave out the second table, which is supposed to add to the 19.3 billion cedis mentioned yesterday, bringing the total to about 25.85 billion Ghana cedis.
Okay, thank you very much, Isaac Kofieje. He's with Joy Research Desk, he's a data analyst, and we've been looking at the figures as put out by the Finance Minister. Meanwhile, Corruption Watch Ghana has urged members of the Finance and Health Committees to be mindful of their integrity as they probe the COVID-19 expenditure. Convener Adam Sananu says the committees owe the country a duty to be thorough and independent in their probe.
That overall understanding of where the money went, what came in. Because first of all, we have a discrepancy between the 19 and the 25.5. Where are all those monies? And even when they were disbursed, these entities who received, how did it impact them? How was it used? Because the magnitude or the quantum of the money begins to give you a sense of, okay, so this is what potentially went in, and what could we or what did we actually do with it? So there are very relevant issues that have come up, and we are hoping that in the days and weeks to come, we'll have clarity on whether this enterprise actually benefited us, or some very clever people have gone behind us and gone away with monies they ought not to have received. The Health and Finance Committees who've been tasked by the Speaker to look at this have a lot to lose if they don't do it well. Remember that the arguments involved an open public discussion, and we obviously will be interested in the proceedings of those committees as they look at the figures. And I'm quite sure that the minority, knowing full well the momentum that has been galvanized around this and the interpretations that citizens will give if it's not out there for us to know what is going on, will be cautious about making sure that we are kept in step with what they are doing there.
Well, that's Adam Senanu, convener for Corruption Watch Ghana. Let's hit the ground now. And this afternoon, the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Bagbing, we're told, has been paying some surprise visits to some key institutions. And the first stop today, we're told, is the Buffer Stock Company. And the CEO there, Abdul Wahab Hanan, is blaming rising prices of foodstuffs on the activities of middlemen whom he claims are creating artificial shortages. My colleague, Kweku Asante, parliamentary correspondent, is with the Speaker's team, joins us live. Kweku, let's talk about what the Speaker actually said to the CEO of the Buffer Stock when he told him about the rising food prices or foodstuffs, which is the reason why we are where we are.
So the Speaker has expressed some great concerns about food shortage in the country, which has also led to very, very expensive prices on the market. And so this morning, out of the blue, the Speaker decided that the Food and Buffer Stock Company somewhere he wanted to talk to and try to get the understanding of what is going on. And that is when Abdul Manan came in and explained to the speaker that there are cartels in the food distribution system who are hoarding foods and creating artificial shortage in the system. But the speaker charged them to try and deal with this situation before Ghanaians get very angry.
And it's interesting that the speaker is on this surprise visit. Apart from the Ghana Buffer Stock Company, where else is he headed to? Do we know what exactly is this supposed to be about?
Well, the speaker has also just gone to the food, the catering secretariat, the National School Feeding Secretariat, and he's been speaking about how the 97 pesos that is given to caterers is not enough and cannot be used to prepare any nutritious food. And so he implored the secretariat to listen to the demand of the caterers who are demanding for 3 cedis per school child. The speaker is expected to visit other institutions in the coming days on a surprise basis to try and find out how they are doing their job and how they are impacting the Ghanaian citizens.
That's parliamentary correspondent Kweku Asante. We'll talk more about food in our latest Living Standard series, but let me head to my colleague Michael Papania-Shale, and we are told that some commercial transport operators have served notice to embark on a demonstration on the 26th and 27th of June over what they described as a rising cost of operations. Well, he joins us on the line with more on this. So how did Ghana's fuel compare to other West African countries? I'm sure they've been telling you about it.
Yes, so Emefa, when they're comparing Ghana's fuel, they calculate this as a gallon. A gallon makes up about 4.5 liters, makes up a gallon. And in Ghana here, it says that it's up to the buy at 61 Ghana cedis. But compared to that in Nigeria, that's 20 Ghana cedis. And in neighboring countries, below the 40 Ghana cedis mark. And they think that that definitely hasn't helped us that they do in Ghana.
And then also we know that they've been giving some reasons as to why they've intended to hit the streets in terms of this strike. Tell us more.
So Emefa, we also have the spare parts dealers here and Okada riders. These two entities here, they import a lot of the parts that they use and the motorbikes that they buy. So for Okada riders, they make the point that the depreciation cedi means that they have to buy a motor that they used to buy at 4,000 Ghana cedis, now at 10,000 Ghana cedis. For spare parts dealers, they rely a lot on dollars to import the parts. Now that has become something that is very difficult actually because of the depreciating cedi. And finally, they make they talk about the roads in Ghana, that road connectivity is really bad, and the roads that are already been made are very, very in a deplorable state.
That's my colleague Michael Papania-Shale. Well, fufu, a local staple, is enjoyed by many households in Ghana, but the recent cost of ingredients is forcing lovers to pay more for the local delicacy. It will now cost you 90 cedis to prepare one at home, or at least 10 cedis to buy a bowl of fufu with or without meat in some cases. In today's Living Standard series, Love FM's Emmanuel Bright Kweku engages some food vendors and fufu lovers in Kumasi.
Kwame is a regular visitor to Aponchechi for his favorite dish, fufu and light soup. He used to buy the popular meal at a minimum of 20 Ghana cedis, but now he has to double the amount to be satisfied.
This year,
I would normally take shots of alcohol as a starter, but I can't anymore. I now buy fufu close to 30 Ghana cedis.
First, na me ba. Evan se bibia be si be 20,000 me yuki. Ba ele appetite ni nim kura 30 kura ntimi enjoy papa.
Now normal is 60. Normal.
Owner of the food joints, Ma Ivy, says the minimum amount to pay for a fairly decent fufu with meat is 10 Ghana cedis.
So we banaka so fufu 10 cedis. What matter fufu 4 cedis. And I'm 6 cedis.
Fufu and soup is a popular food for many Ghanaians, but its preparation now comes with a huge cost due to rising costs of cassava, plantain, vegetables, meat, and other ingredients. Prices have also doubled in the last few months. Atamame has been selling cassava and plantain for almost 2 decades. She says she has to sacrifice some tubers of cassava to cushion her customers.
5 cedis in any. 5 cedis.
I sell cassava at 5 Ghana cedis. I sometimes add more to cushion my customers.
It's a good time to take a fufu break here on the Midday News. Our top stories we've been looking at. Chairman of Parliament's Finance Committee says any probe into government's expenditure must be expanded to cover government's total expenditure for the year 2020. When we return, we'll hear from researchers as they predict government's quest to raise some 4.5 billion cedis from the electronic transaction levy not likely to be met, as majority of Ghanaians sampled say they have drastically reduced mobile money transactions.
After the enactment of the e-levy, we saw that the transfer cost became critical. So the people are looking at the transfer cost. Is the cost high? If the cost is high, I don't want to use. If it's not high, I want to use. 83% of them indicate that the volume has reduced for them.
Yamawa Aquaba, but Aquaba Magic Busia, brand new channel, Tia Roba, Emuno Tiao, Ewo DSTV channel 149 and Go TV channel 108. Enianom Aquaba Magic Busia, Eddie Nidia Ghanaian programs mu Baufi, a bit said the day to have and to hold. Enyom Senior Cassia series and a talk show, Bemo Account TV set Nichi. Aquaba Magic Busia, Ewo DSTV access to 50 Ghana cedis per and Go TV value to 25 Ghana cedis per Ebusia Aquaba.
Thanks for choosing us. It's the Midday News here on Joy 99.7 FM. We are getting ready to go to Qatar, but it looks like there's a lot of things that we have to fulfill.
Yes.
Including what? We are told you can't. Okay, well, tell us more.
What matters is that the police of your country must satisfy that you do not have any history of criminal acts that you've done in the country. So they say that if you come to Qatar, you should abide by the laws and regulations set. So there was a press conference where the Ghana Police Service were present, and they sent a warning to Ghanaian supporters.
Qatar has a lot of restrictions. So as we go there, we go and then comport ourselves and abide by their rules, so that we don't have anybody going in and then going to stay for 7 more years before coming back to Ghana.
We want the Ghana Police Service to ensure that everybody who is coming to Qatar is not violent, has no criminal records, and we are going to work together with Temple, Travel and Tours to ensure that we clear all the supporters who will be going to Qatar. So by the time you get to Qatar, they will have every detail about you, and they know that you are not one of the violent supporters.
So I can play Emefa if you want to go to the World Cup.
I think I can play needs it more than I do.
Just ready yourself so that you avoid going to jail for 7 years.
Hey,
7 years.
Well, maybe we'll just start watching it on TV, maybe. But let's talk about the electronic transaction levy, and researchers at Imani Africa are predicting that government's quest to raise some 4.5 billion cedis from the levy is not likely to be met. This is because majority of Ghanaians sampled in a survey say they have drastically reduced their mobile money transactions since May 1, when the tax law took off. Government pushed through the levy despite heated opposition, with experts warning of reduction in usage of mobile money platforms. Think tank Imani Africa has been digging into this. Joseph Akable is with our research desk. He joins us in studio with more on this. So Joseph, which period was the data collected?
So the data was collected from May 31 to June 17, and 1,677 persons participated in this survey.
Well, let's talk about the findings. First, the impact on digital transactions.
82.7% of those sampled say they have reduced the volume of e-levy transactions since the policy took off. Kinkao Tonam Duho is researcher at Imani Africa.
Only 7.6% say they are not using at all. Maybe they have been able to adjust to other systems. But 30.3%, above 30% of them are still using either 1 to 2 times in a week, or 2 to 5 times, or even more than 5 times. They are still using it. So the usage is still there. Then also we asked them the volume, has their volume of transaction changed? So we saw that 82.7% of them indicated that their volume of transaction has changed over the period. But then we asked them that to what extent has this volume changed? Because government's calculation is that 24% of them will be 24. The volume will have changed by about 24%. But I want to get from the ground based on their opinion. And we saw that a lot of them. So first of all, I want to pick from the highest one. More than about 50% of them indicated that the volume of transactions has reduced by about 51% to 100%.
Well, Joseph, let's talk about what this means for government's revenue target.
And so they make the point that government intends to rake in some 4.5 billion cedi, but because of people reducing the transaction, that is not likely to be met.
So we are having more people that are avoiding. The volume may be reduced more than what is estimated earlier. The value may be reduced more than what is estimated earlier. And then the forecasts that were also made may not be met. So these are some of the critical things. Then also we have some other things. So we saw that there's a strong elasticity from the people. So the people are able to change very strongly, very significantly in this context. Maybe that's not what was expected, but that's what's happening.
Kin Kao Tonam Duho is a researcher at Imani Africa. They're interacting with Winston Namwa. Now, a principal revenue officer and head of the project management unit for GRA, Isaac Obnamwako, meanwhile says it's too early for firm conclusions to be drawn on the impact of the levy.
We are still churning data. I don't think it's too early.
Oh, it's too early?
Yes. It's too early to give actual figures. Besides, we've told the charging entities that the actual data should come to the Ghana Revenue Authority on the last day of the following month. So that means for May e-levy collected, we haven't yet received the actual data for us to start analyzing. That should come somewhere 30th of June for us to receive the very first data, and that is not currently in. What we're seeing is the inflow side. We now to go into the actual data side.
Which made you happy at the time?
I'm still happy. Let me add one thing. It looks like we are so fixated on the indirect tax of e-levy. We've not availed our mind to the direct tax of e-levy. And I, being a tax practitioner, I'm looking at both. For the purposes of e-levy, we've been able to, being careful here, from one charging entity, we are looking at about almost 300,000 merchants whose data hitherto the GRA wasn't having. But for the purposes of e-levy, they've disclosed this information to us. We've done some data matching. We are even realizing that less than 1% of this 300,000 is what is on our database as taxpayers. So the two objectives of, because of e-levy, increasing the tax net is happening.
Isaac Obnamwako there speaking to Winston Namwa. He's with the GRA. Now, Virtual InfoSec Africa has set up a new cybersecurity lab at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology. The lab will run course from certified ethical hacking to cybersecurity analysts. Speaking at the launch, Chief Executive of Virtual InfoSec Africa, Emmanuel Sechirisiedu, was hopeful these skills will prepare students for the job market.
Virtual InfoSec Africa is a Ghanaian-owned company that specializes in the provision of information security services and cybersecurity. The company provides training and resolves security challenges. They have a reputation for being one of the top most innovative designers and developers in security and network provision. The courses run by the lab would include certified ethical hacking, Linux certified practitioner, and cybersecurity analyst. Others are penetration testing, vulnerability scanning and analysis, and digital forensics. Chief Executive Officer of Virtual InfoSec Africa, Emmanuel Sechirisiedu, said funding opportunities will be available to females who would want to pursue cybersecurity.
Women, as part of our vision, I think when we signed, we done with a memorandum of understanding. We may have to invest a lot. Any lady who wants to be part of this, maybe even pay their tuition for free, so that more women will be encouraged. It's a safe and valuable for women compared to other engineering courses.
That's for our Tech Thursday. Time for our Drive Safe campaign.
Safe driving saves lives. Drive safe.
And crash helmets are used by motor riders to serve as protection to the head against injuries in accident cases. For this reason, riders are mandated to put on their crash helmet before using the road. But Okada business operators in Accra are revealing that some pillion riders, despite the risks they are exposed to in accidents, are dishing their use of crash helmets. They spoke to Samuel Mbura in this interview.
Help us to be wearing the customer elements so that the work will be easier to all of us.
So you're raising concern that some of the passengers don't want to use the helmet because of COVID-19.
Yeah, it's true. Some of them don't want to wear helmets. If you are giving them helmets, they say, I don't like helmets. If you no go, you no go. Me, I actually reject some customers like that because I don't want to go somewhere and then they arrest me. Because if they see, they have to do their responsibility because one element is not allowed. And they don't want to wear one element because everybody has been using it. They say because of sickness, man.
Sickness like what?
Like coronavirus, and then like if I'm sweating and I wear it and somebody to wear it. So you see the sweat inside the element and you say I won't wear it.
Well, a writer there speaking to my colleague Samuel Imbura, and that's how we end today's edition of the Midday News. We're live on Joy 99.7 FM in Accra and Kumasi. It's on Love 99.5 FM. There's more news when you log on to myjoyonline.com, and Justice when Yanuga dismisses Opuni stay of application. Also, a girl found dead in drain at Ablikuma mine here with hands tied. Samini wins 2020 Gimpa SRC elections. That and more on myjoyonline.com. I am Emefa Apawu. Many thanks for your company. We have Living Word with Pastor Mensel Tebel up next.
Hello, please, am I speaking to Miss Joanna Kuma?
Yes, please.
My name is Philip and I'm calling from MTN. Someone has just sent you money and we will need you to